We hear a lot of perspectives on the Mankind podcast. Inclusion of a guest is not an endorsement of their views, and the opinions expressed here do not always represent the mission or values of the Mankind Project USA.
What is it sitting way, way down under the relationship issues you're facing? There's no shortage of people putting relationship advice out there telling us how to get better. Thousands of minute-long TikToks to fix it all in 8 easy steps. And you're not going to believe step 4, right? Well, and then there's the real work. Defensiveness, bad listening, lack of understanding, codependency, enabling, it's all out there. So today in our episode of the Mankind Podcast, let's separate some of the nourishing grain from the wispy chaff. We're with Jayson Gaddis. Jayson is the creator and founder of the Relationship School and author of the best-selling book, Getting to Zero: How to Work Through Conflict in Your High-Stakes Relationship. Jayson knows what's up because he's done the work. He's got the scars and he's got the degrees to prove it. So is what you're doing working for you? Have you proven finally to yourself that you're hurt enough? Pull up a seat. Are you robbing your partner of their dignity? Do you feel like you're trying to drag a dead body up a mountain? Are you really ready to face the trauma and issues that are keeping your nervous system in crisis? Jayson's been leading 9-month-long intensive programs, coaching and working with couples to truly transform relationships. He helps couples and families heal and get the kind of connections they truly want. This episode is going to give you some of the real stuff. This is me and Brandon together. Buckle up. Welcome to the Mankind Podcast. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Mankind Podcast. We're live rolling with you on Facebook today. I'm Boysen Hodgson. I'm here today with Brandon Clift, who you all know. This is a rare occasion when Brandon and I get to celebrate together. And we're with Jayson Gaddis, the man, the myth, the legend, the beast, the man who I had on a pedestal for years and years and years. And then I knocked him off the pedestal, and then I put him back up on the pedestal in the last few years, watching the work that he has been doing with relationships. Jayson, welcome.
Thanks, Boysen. It's great to see you.
Beautiful. So yeah, I actually reached out to Jayson to be on the show and connected with Boysen. Boysen's like, I know Jayson. And I was like, you do? Because I've been following your work and you have a wonderful social media presence. I love when there are people like yourself who are judged to be showcasing mature and healthy masculinity, especially as it pertains to relationships. I want the volume dial cranked to 11 for guys like yourself, and perhaps turned it down for some others out there. So just grateful for your presence and what you're putting out there and that you're joining us today.
Yeah, thanks, Brandon. Really psyched to be here, guys. Let's do it.
Let's do it. So, mate, you've, the Relationship School, is that coming up on 10 years that you've been in that work?
Ooh, close. 8 years officially with the school, and many more prior to that, just finding my way, helping people.
Fantastic. So what was the calling for you? What was it about relationships that had you go this deep into it?
Pain, man. Just absolute, utter pain, depression, anxiety, feeling like a failure. Medicating on top of that so that I didn't have to feel any of that. And just a final breakup with another good woman who was just an awesome person. And I couldn't do intimacy. And I just was like, what the hell? And then I realized I was the common denominator in all these failed relationships I had. And when I saw that, I stopped pointing the finger at them and started pointing the finger at me, not in a blamey way, but in a responsible way, saying, okay, I got some work to do here. Yeah.
One of those bitter pills. Absolutely. So, and I'm sure in each of those circumstances, you had a well-crafted story as to why it wasn't your fault, but eventually it becomes, the evidence is just too clear.
Right. Yeah. I mean, basically the story, the summary that kind of included all the women I dated was, you're making me feel bad. And I want this to be easy and kind of drama free. And I didn't know that I was just getting activated. You know, all my childhood stuff was getting activated. I didn't know how to deal with it. I had no tools. I had no awareness. So when I went away from, I'd push them away or pull away, and I'd go have a beer with my guy friends or go do sports or something, and I would feel better. So I concluded it must be them. Right? That was my logic.
The company you keep, hey? They must have been edifying that story.
Yeah. I mean, they poor all these women. Like I later when I was in my healing work, I wrote some of those women letters, like finally owning how I made them wrong, and was not owning anything before that. And I think it was healing for me. I don't know what it was like for them, because some of them didn't return my letter.
Sure. And you mentioned childhood stuff was coming up when you started to do your work. What were the key lessons that you had adopted, or stories you'd adopted at a young age, that was then causing you to show up in these ways in these relationships?
Yeah, the main one was stuffing my sensitivity, my emotions, my empathic side that, you know, women, of course, later would bring out, and they were acting emotional and needy and sensitive. And I hated that, which I saw in them that was really just disowned in me, because I had shoved it down so far as a little boy. I had a stern father who was an athlete and a very successful guy. And the emotions, you know, they just weren't having it in my household, and also on the playground, right? I didn't want to be the boy that was getting made fun of or beat up because I was sensitive or emotional. So I just sucked it all up and pushed it away. But yeah, it would all come out sideways later in my intimate partnerships.
What did that look like and sound like? I so resonate with what you're saying. And the pedestal that I had you on back in the day, right, was, oh my God, he's monster. I mean, look at him. He's gorgeous. He's got everything together. He's on point. I had this stoicism that I projected onto you. I had all of this stuff that I projected onto you. So what was it like when that sensitive little guy actually started getting voice?
Dude, it was scary as hell. Very scary, very uncomfortable to be, especially around men. You know, I started with a female therapist, and that was kind of I wasn't ready for a male therapist yet. And so I began to feel safe with this woman, and started to unlock so much repressed emotion and just tears and rage and all the things. And then I eventually told her, I was like, okay, I think I'm ready to go see a dude. And eventually worked my way towards seeing a male therapist, and I had male teachers, and I was just really, I had so much healing to do around men. And so it was mostly really scary in the beginning. And then it started feeling really amazing. Yeah.
And when did the relationship school as a partnership kind of emerge out of that? Like when did you get a call that was like, oh shit, now I got to start doing something with others?
Yeah. So after that story I told earlier, where I was like, okay, I'm the one common denominator, I went to graduate school, got my master's degree in psychology, met my wife there, and began a lot of deep work on myself in so many different arenas, learning how to meditate and learning how to speak my feelings and even be aware of what I was feeling. And then I started working as a therapist with families in mental health centers. And then I eventually transitioned to private practice and was working mostly with couples. And I, through all my experience, I kept seeing the same theme, which was everybody's issues seemed to stem from some kind of relational trauma in early childhood or adolescence or whenever. And so I started to specialize in relationships. And then I got a little bored, honestly, with seeing 20-something clients a week. And I was like, I got to help more people. I want to reach more people. And so I'd already was experimenting with a blog and writing stuff on Facebook. And, but I was like, I'm going to I was starting to do men's groups, and I kept noticing in men's groups and couples groups, people would get better results than privately with me one-on-one or one-on-two. And the group work started to become like where it was at for me. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to start. I got tired of complaining about there was no class in high school or college. So I was like, shit, I'm just going to start one. And let's go for 9 months instead of 9 weeks or 8 weeks. Let's go for 9 months and see who will jump on this train with me. And some like 20 something brave people did. And they went on a 9-month journey, and it was really epic what happened. That's kind of when it started.
It's amazing. And I've been watching so how many cohorts have you guys done now?
Well, with our coaching certification program, I'm starting my 13th in 2 weeks.
Amazing.
Which is wild to think about. I'm like, and I've led every single one of those. And I've gotten my ass handed to me many times along the way, because you guys know what it's like when you get, you bring up people's traumas and stuff, and you're trying to teach them how to work with other people. It's like, I would get a lot of projections coming my way. So it's been a dojo for sure. And, but I wouldn't trade it. I feel way more skilled than I've ever been, and, just more capable as a leader. I thought I was a good leader prior, and I really just got my ass kicked and shown that I was a mediocre leader. And so I feel like I don't know, just becoming a more capable leader. And that feels really good just to have earned that, right? Through so many reps.
So this is I think a great opportunity in 168 episodes, Boysen. This always comes back to the same point every time, which is it's so important just to do your work.
Amen.
And look what comes on the other side of doing your work. I almost need to program a button, like a do your work button, because no joke, every episode it comes back to that. So just to, Jayson, you're very humble in how you talk about your work, but I'm just going to boast on you for a second, just to show those listening who may be kind of sitting at the foot of the mountain that they know they need to climb, which could be their work, the thing they're afraid of. What could be on the other side? So your podcast, nearly 1,000 5-star ratings, the Relationship School podcast, over 500 episodes. You've had 13 cohorts come through the Relationship School, trained hundreds of coaches in 11 countries. Your book, Getting to Zero, How to Work Through Conflict in Your High Stakes Relationships, was voted Editor's Choice Best Nonfiction and Best Leadership and Business Book in 2021 on Amazon. Married since 2007. So there is a lot of credibility behind what you're saying. And what attracted to me to you so much is there is no shortage of people putting good information out there online. But you can tell who has actually integrated what they're saying, who's actually integrated it into their own lives, who's actually living what they're saying, which allows me to trust you more. So thank you for eating shit for years.
Yeah, thanks. That's a great way of saying it. Yeah, I appreciate that.
On all of our behalfs, they get to learn from that and possibly avoid some of it. So thank you.
Which is a great entry point, a great redirection point. Okay, so 13 cohorts later, best-selling book, amazing podcast. Now we're going to ask you to do hard shit and boil something down. Let's go with men first.
Mm-hmm.
Men walk into the relationship school with partners, without partners. What are the top 3 things that you have had to run into over and over and over again that you want to bring out?
Yeah. Well, I mean, men have they have a little bit of a steeper climb, I think, as you guys know, because the conditioning is so thick around how we should be or are supposed to be as little boys. The indoctrination is pretty thick. So, so I think every man that I meet that comes into our world is dealing with that, either consciously or unconsciously. And it's going to prevent him from getting what he wants. And it's just subordinating to a construct really about how a man is supposed to be. So if a guy is open-minded, he'll see that. And then, as you guys know, begins the work and can kick ass. But if a guy can't see that, what I see is defensive assholes who want to blame other people. And as you know, they're just covering up their shame, deep shame. that they're feeling so inept and incompetent in their marriage or in their family as a father or whatever. And so I'm always sussing that out in the first few minutes, right? Is like, who am I dealing with here? How defended is this character and how receptive is he? And so that's a big one. And then they come in with complaints. I think there's kind of two types of men, if I had to really simplify it, which is kind of reductionistic, but there's just kind of the open-minded guy who's like, yeah, I have problems, help me. I seem to be either the nice guy or a people pleaser or whatever. And then there's the non-receptive guys who just are pointing the finger. She's too much. She's too needy. She's, if it's a heteronormative relationship. So that's kind of what I see initially.
And then on the opposite side, what do you see with women coming into the relationship school?
Boy, just a willingness and an open-mindedness to, and just a real humility to do something different. They've, so many of the women that come to us, it seems like lean in the codependent spectrum. So they've tried to help their man. They've been doing the emotional labor in the relationship. They're trying really hard, but their focus is on the guy or their partner, and their focus is not on themselves. Mm-hmm. And so we quickly turn that around and hold up the mirror to them and say, look, he's not the problem. Your codependency, or you have a pattern here of trying to fix or help or rescue or be the coach or therapist. That's the problem. So let's deal with that. And they're honestly pretty receptive. It's hard to see, right? We can't see them ourselves very clearly. But if we get pointed out a few times in a skillful way, people are like, oh my God, I didn't know. And okay, great.
What do you find is the best approach to holding up that mirror to a man so they can actually see the impacts of their behavior?
Yeah. So I find I have to confront men a lot, especially if I'm working with a couple. The dude is just running some kind of thing. And I'll say things like, Hey bro, hold on a second. Let's just pause for a second. Is what you're doing right now working for you? And then I'm like, hold on. No, answer the question. Is this what you're doing? Your technique of talking and listening, is it working with her right now? And if I really confront that, they'll say no. And I'm like, okay, so we have two choices. You can be coachable and I can show you how to do it better, or you can do it your way. What do you want to do? And guys, again, the receptive guys are like, all right, fine, go, tell me what to do. All right, so here's what you're going to do. And then I start saying, instead of what you just did, let's try this. And so I just get right in there, and it's like a coach, right? It's like, instead of throwing the ball this way, try throwing it this way. And, again, the guy who's in enough pain, who's open-minded, will actually be coachable and will start doing it. And then he sees a majorly different result. Now his woman is in tears because he finally fucking listened to her. And then he's like, oh, yeah, that worked better than my way.
Sounds like you occasionally need to leverage the stakes.
Yeah.
In the relationship. Like, you wouldn't be sitting here right now. We wouldn't be having this conversation if you had all the answers like you think you do.
Yeah.
Right now.
Exactly. And then I might sometimes I have to validate his conditioning and say, look, I know, I get it. You're a dude. You need to know the answer. You need to be right. You need to not look bad right now. I hear you. I can relate. I've spent years in that trap. And right now we're just going to, set all that down and learn something a little different. And you didn't, I might even have to say, look, you haven't done anything wrong here. Don't worry, bro. I'm not judging you. Just to soften the edges to get him to be more receptive,
Nothing like a well-placed bro.
Yeah.
To get him to open up and listen.
That works for me. Obviously there's guys that don't want to work with me because I'm a dude bro guy, but that's okay. I'm not worried about that because I know I'm going to be most effective with men and women or whoever comes to me if I'm being myself.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think it's so important that, that balance. Man of this work named Dene Maria Sebastiana calls it fierce and tender. You can still empathize and meet the man because there's a hurt there. There's a pain there that's getting in the way. that's unresolved. But also, what is it? Are they going to listen through a touch of a feather or a kick to the balls? And sometimes you need to kick them in the balls.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Wake them up.
Firm believer of the ball kick.
Just the subtle tap that quantifies in pain over time.
This is live. There's video. Everyone knows what Brandon just did with his front two fingers. We called
it's a great reminder.
Bipping in upstate New York. We called that bipping.
Bipping. Oh man, see, this is a great reminder for those who listen to the podcast. Head to the Facebook Mankind Project page if you want to see these live. Check it out. You'll find us.
So behavioral shifts, let's talk about a few specific things that you find yourself teaching over and over in the relationship school for those men and for those women. So for men who show up defensive, who show up, fuck you, you're making me wrong again. There we are again. I can't do anything right. You're constantly correcting me, or women who are stuck in the pattern of carrying the emotional labor for the relationship and essentially parenting an adult man. What are some kind of subtle behavioral changes that you start to invite for couples?
Yeah. Well, again, I have to get buy-in to quote the work, as you guys said. So I once I get him enrolled, and I might have to do a little bit of sales pitch around his values. Like, look, you know, you've worked really hard. You've probably put in a lot of reps to something in your life, and you got good, right? Yes. Okay. The same is true here. You got to put in some reps. Are you willing to do that kind of thing? Once that's established, then we can, one of the first things I do always is show people how they're not great communicators. And I do that, you know, whenever we're in a snag, there's two things to do. You can either talk or you can listen. And I usually say the more efficient move is to become the listener and get the other person's world as quickly as you can, as effectively as you can. And so I say, okay, just try to listen to her again and let's see if you can understand her. And he falls down over and over. And I say, okay, your way's not really working. You did a couple things there. Are you open to coaching? Yes. Okay. I give him some pointers. And then I introduce my concept called Lufu that I write about in the book, which is, it's an acronym that stands for listen until they feel understood, which I developed years ago when my wife would say, I don't feel understood. And I'd say, well, yes, I do. I understand you. And she'd say, no, you don't. And I spent 3 years arguing with her whether I understand her or not, which is such a waste of time. Yes. I'm that dense, right? Yes. So I set up a new rule for myself and I said, okay, honey, I don't understand you until you tell me you feel understood. And that changed the game for us. And so I always introduce Lufu and I say, okay, let's try this. And it's a few steps. And basically Lufu, without spending a lot of time on it, it's, I reflect back the essence of what they said. I validate if there's a feeling word. And with 3 words, that makes sense. Your feelings make sense. And I try to empathize. And I own something if I did something. Or if she says I did something, I own it. Yes, I raise my voice. And it makes sense you feel hurt and scared by that. And I can appreciate how that must be pretty hard on you over there. When we begin to listen this way, it's just a completely different relationship. Because what most people are doing is they're not listening. They're waiting their turn to defend themselves or prove a point or, you know, some bullshit. So listening differently and more effectively can move the needle more than a lot of things. So that's one of the first things I do.
Yeah, it's thank you for that. To me it harkens to like the Gottmans, John and Julie Gottman, when they have the aftermath of a fight process, which Christine and I, it's so funny. I'm usually the one to pull it out of the side table when we're in that snag. She just wants to, you know, punch me in the face. I'm like, I hang it up. I'm like, hi, I'm ready. Are you ready?
Yeah. Right. Can we do this?
Can we do this? And yeah, it's powerful to be able to hold that space and and I love the structure because it's like, I don't want to listen to you right now, but step 2 says I have to listen. So I'm just going to shut up and let you do your thing. And then when that content amongst the context comes out, it's like, whoa, okay, I see how I got here now. And I see how the impacts of my actions here. So Great reminder. So getting them to listen,
Mm-hmm.
Lufu, listen until they feel understood. And I imagine that goes both ways, even though for the most
Absolutely.
part, I imagine that's the men who are probably challenged.
We want to be in a relationship. We want to choose partners who will do that for us, right? That's called a fair, mutual, reciprocal relationship. We want to choose those kind of relationships.
Beautiful.
And how about the caretaking? How about women who come into, or men who come into relationship or come into your space? I'm going to take care of his feelings all the time, no matter what. I'm going to take care of her feelings all the time, no matter what. The over nice guy.
Yeah, nice guys.
It's intense, right? We have to show them how that's hurting them more than it's helping them. But in their perception, they think it has more advantages than disadvantages, which is why they're doing it and repeating it. And so it takes someone like us to say, actually, let's look at this pretty closely. You really believe that if you keep taking care of him, it's going to get you what you want. And so we say, well, let's flip it around. Well, let's say you stop doing that completely. What are you afraid is going to happen? Well, the relationship's going to end. He's going to go away. He's going to be mad at me, like all this stuff. And it's like, well, let's find out. Let's see if that's true. And then we do an experiment of some kind in the session or together in the group or whatever, where she doesn't do it. And then we see what his actual reaction is. And the good news, bad news is when the enabler, codependent type person, people pleaser, stops doing their pattern. The good news, bad news is the other person now is forced to do something different because they don't have the caretaking coming their way. So they're like, and I always say caretaking robs a person of the ability to grow and develop, because you're enabling them to stay stuck by doing it for them. I say this to parents all the time. Stop doing your kids' chores for them. Stop doing their laundry for them if they're teenagers. Or you're creating a kid who won't launch, who will continue to look to you to do things for them. And the same is true in our partnerships. So when people see this, they're like, oh, and then it robs, we say it in language like this, like you're robbing that person of the dignity to develop themselves. You're saying, you're having this arrogant stance, like, I don't believe you can do this on your own. And then I have them say that to their partner, and they're like, oh shit.
Yes.
Right? Very painful for them to say what they're doing out loud and put words to it. And then their partner feels really put out. Like, what? You don't trust me? You don't believe? Yeah, because I'm going to keep doing it for you.
Here's what I'm demonstrating. That there has been a turning point in my relationship with my wife in the last couple of years when we both made a commitment to stop rescuing each other from our shit.
Yeah.
It was radical shift.
Yeah.
To say, honey, okay, when I do this, I recognize now that I'm manipulating you into doing X, Y, or Z in our relationship because I don't want to take care of my own stuff. I'm committed to stopping doing that, and I want your support.
Nice.
And she was able to say the same thing. Like, when I do this, when I criticize, when I do this, when I shame you for I realize that's me wanting to bail out of our relationship. I'm committed to stopping doing that. I want you to call me on it when I'm doing it.
So good.
Poof.
Yeah. Really well said there. Yep. I love that. And we have to, sometimes tell people like, look, you're not wrong or bad for doing this caretaking behavior. You probably had to do that as a little boy or girl or as a little kid because it got you love, it got you approval, it got you less abandonment, rejection, and pain. So I get it. Yeah. And you don't need to do this in your adult relationship anymore.
There's the shadow side.
What kind of radical transformations have you seen with couples that have gone through the relationship school?
Oh, man. Unbelievable. Let me think of a couple of examples. Yeah. So I always tell people, look, if you're going to come to the relationship school, please don't have the agenda that it's going to make everything great in your relational life. What I've seen is the people that come through here, there's a lot of pain and there's a lot of carnage, meaning they finally end the relationship. They finally get divorced. They finally get empowered, and the other person won't come along for the ride, and they move on. And so there's a lot of loss, because when people get honest with themselves, they realize I've been tolerating crap, scraps or crumbs for 20 years, and I'm not willing to do that anymore now that I'm valuing myself more. And so a lot of relationships end. And of course, we have the opposite where relationships go to the next level because both people are willing to take it there. You can't keep dragging a dead body up a mountain because a lot of people are in those kind of relationships, right? Thinking that the way to get what I want is to change you, the outside. I mean, that was my approach for a long time, right? And it's really limited. It's really aggressive and it's really condescending and it's really, the other person's always going to feel judged, criticized, and not loved. So try not to take that approach. Like let's learn a different way. So I've seen a lot. And then interestingly, last thing I'd say is the parents that come through the programs are just like, they say at the end, my relationship with my kids is night and frickin' day. And I'm always like, well, what happened? Well, I finally am listening. I'm not lecturing, I'm listening. I'm getting to know them. I understand their values and I'm fanning those flames instead of putting my own values on them. They feel more accepted for who they are in our house. It feels safer. They're now like able to like communicate differently because we're modeling it every day in the house. Like it's just bonkers what happens. Yeah.
What do you look for what do you witness in couples that are in gridlock that it doesn't seem, this might be their 6th workshop, they're trying to turn over the stones. What are the signs that you've been able to witness from your lens? I mean, you've had indirectly or directly, right? Because you have coaches that have come through your programming who work with those couples. What are the signs that you're like, ooh, I don't think this is, there's a lot of fertile soil here.
A couple of things. So I always try to do a diagnostic, right? In my own way, in my own head, as I'm listening to people. And so I'm looking for like, okay, is this just a communication problem? And becoming better speakers and listeners alone will solve 90% of their problems. Is it that simple? Even though that's hard in terms of learning a new way to listen, et cetera, that can be hard. So that could be one possibility. Another possibility is, one person is just the dead body, right? They're like not interested in the work. Yeah. That can create a tremendous amount of gridlock. I call it the impossible person syndrome. Like some people find themselves in a marriage with an impossible person. And the impossible person is just super defended and they don't want to grow and they don't want to do the work and they have no interest and they never have and they never will, but they don't want to be alone either. So they stay in this relationship and their partner keeps trying to change them and they both kind of stay in this really stuck. That's gridlock. Those are just a couple of the main big ones. And then another one perhaps is they haven't learned how to work with the conversation below the conversation, which is their nervous systems.
Yay, good.
On a more attachment kind of vibes where you guys probably know this in your own partnerships is under stress. We tend to move in one of two directions. We either get anxious and want to talk about it or we withdraw, right? And usually, of course, we're partnered with someone who does the opposite that we do, and it becomes really frustrating. If you don't understand basic interpersonal neurobiology or the nervous system or attachment dynamics, this is a huge invisible problem that just becomes like a nightmare for people because they don't even know what they're fighting about, right? And when you point that out to people and they start learning how to actually take good care of the other person's nervous system and look after it like you would just a loving parent or something, it becomes really a different game. And people are like, oh, you mean if I'm actually kind to you and I lower my voice and I put my hand on your shoulder instead of pointing my finger at you, this whole thing could change? Yeah. And they learn to do this kind of seek avoid dance because it's kind of a unresolvable dance, but they learn to do it as a team instead of trying to make the other person, hey, well, you should never withdraw from me and you should just never get anxious. That goes nowhere.
No, and thank you for saying that because that was definitely, it still worked for me. I naturally withdraw. My wife naturally comes out when she's feeling intense emotions or hot emotions. And so sometimes that can come in the form of picking up other things that I may have been dropping the ball. And so I'm like, whoa, like I'm ducking and dodging things when what she needs from me is to like hold it down, be the rock, let her purge, let her get it out. And I remember when that was initially became clear through like some of the Gottman stuff, I was like, wait. So I'm supposed to like cuddle a cobra here? Is that what's happening
Exactly.
right now? And seriously, like, no, that is exactly what the doctor's ordering right now, is to like stand in the fire. Don't take it personal, create my own little shield, and just let her move through those motions. And that's been really helpful, because previously I'm like, I'm not putting up with this.
Right.
Like, why am I going to get slagged on?
Yeah, this is a good one.
When it's about something else. And it's like, no. I'm a big boy. I've seen this before. Like, I can handle this.
Totally. And I want to add 2 disclaimers there. One is that works as long as the person's not being like emotionally abusive or screaming and yelling and name calling. Like, I don't like guys standing in that fire. That's like, no, you don't need to stand in that fire. You need to set a boundary in that fire.
Yeah.
So as long as it's not escalated at that level, then we're cool. I'm on board with everything you said. And so many of us do need to learn, like I'm still learning, how do I actually hold my wife's feelings? Because I get triggered sometimes when she brings her feelings, and then I make it about me. And then she feels dropped. I'm not able to like hold her feelings anymore, because I'm all over here like, oh, I'm all hurt now. And then I'm wanting her to come support me. And I'm like, she's gotten so frustrated with me when I do that. And it's educated me. I'm like, holy shit, I see that I'm doing that again. Yeah. So I still fall down there, and it makes things worse when I do. Yeah. There's one other disclaimer, but I forgot what it was.
Yeah. Well, thank you for owning that too, because that gives me and other listeners a chance to go like, oh, wow, Jayson Gaddis, amazing, achieved all these things. And you're like, oh, these are the things that I still run into as well. It's all just part of the course, getting the reps in. We had Lauren Kren. I don't know if you're aware of him. He's a Spanish relationships guy, and he came on and he said something that really landed with me is, if you really want to engage that kind of mature masculine energy within yourself to be able to withstand those storms and stand in that fire, you need to get good at being able to face yourself in stillness.
Yeah.
Like the ability to sit with you in all of this, and going straight to making these things about me. Right.
Mm-hmm.
It's going into victim, right? As opposed to going into someone that can stand there and go like, no, this isn't about me. And even if some flakes of truth are coming through in this, like, this isn't what this is about right now. Like, I can just be firm and hold it down for my partner right now, who's clearly going through something. Yeah.
Nice. I'm with that. Love it.
So, mate, where are your sights set now going forward? I mean, you've got teenagers, as I understand,
yep.
And you've been with your wife since 2007. You got the relationship school. Like, you have a lot of irons in the fire and amazing things happening in your life right now. What's your vision for the future for this work and the impact it's going to have on the world?
Yeah, well, thanks. I it's been a little bit of a last couple of years post-COVID was, I think for a lot of us, was hard, and I had my own hard. And one of the things that was hard for me was losing my inspiration. And part of that was just disconnecting from my heart and going into my head and fear, and just trying to solve fear problems from fear. And that's just my core default setting is problem in head, solve it from fear. And that's it's good to be able to kind of do that some of the time, but it's not going to solve the bigger problems in my life. I need to get back into my heart. So it's been a bit of a journey to come back in the heart. And I feel new inspiration finally, because I've done some healing around whatever was causing the fear and the kind of contraction. And so I'm feeling new energy. We're going to do our first in-person event here in Boulder that we haven't done one in years. Wow. Cool. I was doing 10 a year before COVID, and then we shut it all down. And I got really lazy and comfortable behind Zoom. Leave meeting, sweet. But now I'm like, no, dude, this work is like so much better together in person. And so we're doing our first in-person event November 7th, 8th, and 9th here in Boulder. Super stoked about that. And my big aspiration, guys, is to reach 17 million American families and teaching them how to repair effectively. I know that's kind of a lofty, absurd goal, but number is 20% of American households. because I know that if a family can learn to repair after they mess up, because that's the inevitable part, we're going to mess up with our kids, we're going to mess up as a couple. It's how quickly can you recover? And sadly, a lot of people don't know how to do that. They don't recover, and they don't recover well. And then it just creates more problems. So that's one of my aspirations. And then of course, I just love kids. And I want to create a program for kids. It's not clear what it's going to be yet.
Awesome. Yeah. Moving away from the ever compounding series of disconnections, right? It's like you want to bring the solution to that so that we don't end up in these fractured, disconnected communities.
Totally. Like I'm trying to create a relational world because we live in a polarized world, and a relational world doesn't stand for I'm right and you're wrong. It holds more complexity, and it's able to sit in the fire of, oh, you believe this and I believe that. How are we going to do this together? And so I want to heal that division in any way I can.
Well, I think that's important because, in our work with the Mankind Project and other organizations, we're doing this stuff after the fact, right? Yeah. We're doing this stuff from a repair lens, and it sounds like you want to get in early. Yeah. I mean, I'm all about both, but if there is prevention we can do, then we got to get to parents and in schools, and that's hard. Not everybody, a lot of people just want to look at their phone and be comfortable. It's like, we're all up against that, right? It's like, I just kind of want to check out. And I'm like, well, you wouldn't want to check out if you were raised in a way to check in and it was safe and okay. And actually, that's where the magic was by being checked in as kids in a checked in family. Maybe we'd be less vulnerable. Soundbite. How are we making it easier for kids to check out than to check in?
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Thank you for that.
I'm just going to brag for a second. So last night, this happens in our house. Last night, food was made, fried rice is ready, send text message to the family chat. Ada, who's here, my 18-year-old, said, I'm not really hungry right now, but are you guys going to hang out in the kitchen for a bit? Comes out of her room, comes downstairs, hangs out in the kitchen just to be together for a while.
Yeah.
Right?
Dude, that's so good. That speaks volumes to what we want.
Yeah. That's what I want.
Yeah. Yeah. Where kids are, again, instead of pursuing their phones, they're like, they understand the resources at the dinner table or in your kitchen.
The family table. That's something I've had long conversations with. Shout out to Larry Dawson, full leader in Australia, who he's been talking forever about we are losing the family table. And I remember my parents had an octagonal table. And so I'm 10 years younger than my siblings. So I'm 7 and they're 17 and 18. And we talk about what's happening in the world. They talk about school. I remember when September 11 happened. I was at the table. They didn't, as a young kid, I was invited into these conversations, and it meant the world to me. Not only does it help me did it help me hold conversations with adults and older people, but it just gave me insights into, oh, no wonder my sister's going through a hard time. I didn't know she got dumped or whatever. Like, okay, I can have more compassion for her now as a 7-year-old rather than annoying older sister. Like, it's just that connection, that link. At the end of the day, we get together and we connect over a meal. Thank you. So I know I'm really happy, Boysen, because I know there's been some challenges over the past couple of years, and it's really just beautiful to hear you checking in about how things are really, that link, that family table.
We still have those challenges. Absolutely. So Jayson, I'm going to go back to you. There is a man or woman sitting out there right now thinking, fuck, my relationship needs help. What's one piece that you want to offer to say, okay, there's an opportunity, there's hope?
Yeah. Look, there's so many good resources out there, including what these guys are serving up. And it's a matter of, can you just follow that thread of, something's not working and I need help. and then decide. It's, we're in a world of so many, it's overwhelmed, decision fatigue of all the choices. And I would say, put your attention on your most important, two relationships, the one with yourself and the one with your intimate partner or a kid or whoever your most important person is in your life, outside of yourself. And just decide to say, I'm going to change this. And I'm going to improve this, and I'm going to love this more, whatever it is. And then it's a matter of, okay, where should I do that? Should I do that online? Should I do that in person? Should I go to a therapist? Should I read a book? And then you got to answer, what, if I'm not a book person, then maybe I should go to a workshop. If I'm not a workshop person, I'd prefer to do this in private, then I should go to a coach or a therapist. If I've tried that and it's not that effective, then maybe I should do something a little steeper and more interesting and more, group oriented or something. So there's just so much out there, but I think those kind of like triaging the issue and choosing, and then being like, okay, how do I want to address the problem? Who's going to be my team, my treatment team? Like, I got a cancer diagnosis a few months back, and I quickly learned that my options were pretty limited if I looked to other people to be the experts. And I was like, oh, a friend said, no, you're the expert and you're the team lead and all these people work for you. And I was like, wow, I like that. So my oncologist and my urologist and my naturopathic doctor and all these other integrative people who, they all don't disagree, they all disagree. They all work for me now, and they're helping me heal. Right. And so I think we all need to take command of our own pain and like, okay, what am I going to do about it?
I think that,
well said.
Yeah, speaks to a lot of what we've spoken about, because my wife, being a cancer survivor, said, no one's going to fight harder for your health than you will.
That's right.
And I think that also
Truth.
applies. No one's going to fight harder for your relationship than you will.
Yeah.
Right. Well, no one should. So taking that, assuming that responsibility, getting clear on what work needs to be done, because it starts with you.
Yeah.
Beautiful, Jayson.
Thank you.
So to all our listeners out there who Boysen's, for those listening, Boysen's holding up his copy of Getting to Zero.
Go get it.
Which is Jayson's book. It's going to be in the show notes. We're going to have links to that. You can also check out the Relationship School podcast, which we're also going to have links to some fantastic resources there.
And Boysen's been on there before.
Hey, there you go. Beauty, beauty. So we'll find that episode. Now, you can also go to relationshipschool.com to find a coach or a workshop near you that you can get involved with. Got an in-person one coming up in Boulder, which is absolutely fantastic. Jayson, was there anything I missed?
That's great, man. Feel free to follow me on social. It's usually at Jayson Gaddis, Jayson with a Y. YouTube and Instagram, probably the main places if you want kind of how-to videos and stuff.
Fantastic. Now, before we leave, of course, we want to thank our listeners who join us each and every week for in-depth conversations. You show up each week because clearly you are committed to your work. So that is just kudos to you that have been hanging with us for a while and showing up for these episodes. I want to congratulate Boysen. 19 years married, my friend. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely wonderful. And 2 years for me and Christine coming up on Friday. So just nice. a bunch of whippersnappers, just figuring it out.
Jayson, it's really good to see you. Let's do it again in less than the amount of time it's been.
Yeah, totally. Thanks again, Boysen and Brandon. It's been awesome. Really appreciate what you guys are doing.
Absolutely. Lots of love. We'll see you all next week.
Cool.
This has been the Mankind Podcast, produced in association with the Mankind Project USA. I have been your host, Brandon Clift, and I personally want to thank our guests for joining us today and imparting their wisdom from their experiences in this amazing journey called life. And of course, I want to thank you, the listener, because through your attention and your support, you make it a heck of a lot easier for us to let men out there in the world know that they are not alone and that there is more than one way to be a man. And if you've been enjoying the music throughout this episode and all of our episodes, check out Jim, Donovan, and the Sun King Warriors. I have links to them in the show notes. Now, the fee for this episode is simple. If you found gold and insights that you believe could benefit your loved ones and those you care about, be sure to share it with them. And of course, remember that life doesn't happen to us, it happens for us, so long as we rip the pen out of fate's hand and become the author of our own story. So my friend, pick up the pen and we'll see you next week. Lots of love.